All right. So this is our console. And this is my root account, right? So for security best practices, it's always recommended that you create an admin account or you create an account for admin purposes and stop using your root accounts for certain things, right? But for the purpose of this labs or for this evening class, I will use the root account and then the admin account concurrently, right? Now, yeah, I mean, we'll see the basic various things that we can do, right? So while I'm on it, if anybody has a question, they can ask. Give me a moment. Let me.
Recording in progress.
Okay, right. So what is a root account? So a root account is the default account that you get, or that is automatically created when you sign up for, and when you create an AWS account or you sign up or sign in into the AWS console. So this is my root account, and this is actually an alias that I've created for. Yes. So Sharon, we'll get to VPCs, right? So we are starting from the beginning. Right, we are starting from the beginning, so we'll get to VPCs. So the first one is actually to create a user, right? Without a user, you will not be able to even create your VPCs. You have to create a console account and then go through before you can create your VPC. So we are just kind of like starting the whole thing, right? This labs wasn't captured in our models, but it was the first thing to actually do. So yes, we'll definitely get to VPCs. Right. So the recommendation is that when you log on into your root account, you now have to, let me hide, disable annotations. You now have to create a user with admin access, and you log out of the root account and now log in into the user account or the admin account, right? So this is what we are going to do basically. All right. I'm just opening a new browser so that we'll use it to log in into the new account. So the feature or the service that will allow you to create a user account is the IAM user. So here, when you log on into your console dashboard, this is how it looks like, right? As I said, this is my root account, and you can see the difference. So it just shows my account ID. Now, when I create a user and log in into the user account, you see how that one looks like. So the service that enables you to do that is the IAM service, and you can either access it by searching, or you can just go through the search and then look at the categories from here, and then you'll be able to see identity and access management. Where is it? I'll have to be, I should be able to see it here. If not, I'll just use my, so you can see security and identity. And then from here, there is what? IAM, right? So you can just go ahead and then search and then you click on it. So I'll click on IAM here. So once it's open, so you can see that I have a user group here. I have a user, and then I even have what roles that I have configured. But I'll remove all these ones and then we'll start everything afresh so that we'll get to understand it. So this is the use admin user group. I will delete it. And I have a user that I created. I'll delete the user as well. And I think there is rows that I'll also delete. This, okay, I created these rows for EC2 or something, right? Okay, yes. So these are rows that I created myself. But let me leave this one and then delete this. I'm not sure of the second one. The first one is for support, but I'm not sure of the second one. But this one, I remember I was the one who created it, so I'll delete this one. Okay, great. So here we are. So the first thing is to create a user, right? So create a user here. So you just go to IAM users and then create user. Now I'll create the username. So I'll use Ohene this time. And then you have to provide the user access to what the AWS management console, even though it is optional, but you will have to do it, right? So that they will also have access to the management console. Now, it is AWS recommend that you use the identity center, but that is not in the scope of SA, or more or less like it's kind of a little complicated setting it up. What we know is how to use it through create an IAM user. So just create an IAM user. And for password, you can auto-generate password. And if you're auto-generating password, then definitely it will require the user to create a new password at the next sign in. For this one, we'll just create a custom password, right? Let me see the keyboard that I'm using. Let me use the US so that I will know what I'm typing. So I'll create a password, right? And I wouldn't let the user change the password or create the new password because it's mine, right? But if you are in any organization that you provide support for, it is always recommended. The best practice is that you let them create a new password once they sign in. So once my password is created, so let's go back and see. I have a username, custom password that I typed myself, and I disabled this, right? And I'll go to next. No, I forget password easily. So let me just change to a generic password so that I'll be able to recall. So let me see. Okay, so I used @test1234, right, as the password, right? And I'll go to next. I will not save this one. Right. Now, there are two ways. So now the next thing is to set permissions. Now let's talk about users a little bit. Now users, as we all know from CCP, a user can belong to one or more groups, right? And then a user can contain one or more users, but the user cannot contain other groups as well, right? So for permissions, you can either attach permissions to the user directly, or you can do it through a user group. And for this walkthrough, we will actually create a user group or add the user to a group. And since we don't have any group, we'll create a group, right? So we'll go to create group, and the group name, I'll use the generic name admin. And the permission that I'll give to this user, let me see, I think administrator access, right? So this is it. So administrator access. So I'll just select administrator access. Great. And then I'll now create the user group. No, so it is not necessary that, but for best practices, it is always like it is recommended. As I said, a user can either belong to a group or not belong to a group. right? So it is not necessary creating a group, but what it means is that if you have, let's say in your organization, you have finance and you have 10 people in finance, instead of creating each user and then granting the permission to each user, you can just create a finance group, give the policy to that finance group, and then any user that you add to that group will assume the permission automatically, right? But if you should create and then create the permissions, that would be like a lot of users and then a lot of permissions for multiple users, right? But then, yes, definitely there can be an outlier that doesn't have any group at all, right? So you can just create that user separately and then attach the policy directly. Yeah. But for best practices, it has to be through like a user group, right? So now I can now select
Yeah,
this.
Isaac, I
Yeah.
have a question.
All right.
Attached policies.
Yeah.
We want to find out if it's predefined. It's already system generated.
Yeah. So the policies are predefined. I wanted to like take it one after the other, but there are policies that are predefined, and you can also create your own policy as well, right? So as we move on, I will explain like the policies and even what it entails, right?
Okay.
Right. You can also set permissions boundary, right, to even control, even though they have access to, they are in the admin and then they assume or all the access that the administrator or this group has, you can still use permissions boundary to control the maximum permissions that they have. And this is also optional, so we'll not actually like go into it. But per your organization's requirement, they might require you to, or every user, irrespective of the group that they belong, they might still have limitations within that group. So you can use the permissions boundary to do that. We'll go to next. And here, as I said, tags are everywhere in all the AWS services. They are just used for organizations, right, to organize your resource. So here I can even give it a tag and then say, okay, this is in the department. So the key is department and is in the IT support, right? It is not necessary that you have to do that, right? But it's just for organization. It's just an extra information that you add to it. It will not actually do anything to the functions of your account or the user's account, right? So probably this might be the only time I'm adding a tag. And yeah, so we are set. We have password, the username, custom password. And does it require a password reset? That is no. Permissions is granted through a group. So we are good to go. So the user is now created, right? Now I can choose to email the sign-in instructions to the user, or I can just download a CSV file and probably send to the user, or I can just return to the list. But here we'll have to test the account out. So I can just copy this link or just click here to copy the sign-in link and open a new browser. I hope you can see the new browser that I've opened. So you can either access, since it's another account, I cannot use just a new tab, right, to access it. You'll still open the one that I'm opening on the root user. So let me just place them side by side. Yes. So this is my root user. You can see from here, the root user ID. And this is a new browser, the Brave browser. And then I'll copy this URL and paste it here. Right. So because it was a sign-in link, and if you look at the sign-in URL, it has the alias there already, right? So this is the user alias, right? This is the alias that we have here. So it opens and then it gives the account alias. So the IAM username is what? And then the password, I'll copy just right now. I've even forgotten it. right? So I paste it here and then now sign in. Never save. So I can now return to my user list. So this becomes what? A fresh account that I have opened. And you can see the difference here. So if you watch closely to the top here, right, you can see user, right, my account, and then my account, just my account ID. But when you come to the admin account that I created, what do you see here? You see what? On here, that's the user that I created at the root user's account alias, right? But this time it gives it what? Console 2. So that's a version, right? So version 2. So it means that as I create, it will automatically generate these numbers for me. This is nothing. You can actually also change the alias as well. So that is about creating a user. So here, from here, I can now log out from my root user, and then I will start using my admin user for purposes. I mean, for my day-to-day purposes. So I can go to IAM from here and list users, and it will still, I will still have the same permissions that I have, right? I will be able to list the users. I'll be able to view the groups and then all that. So you can see if I go to user groups, the admin group that I created is here. If I go to users, this is the user that I have here. If I go to policies, I'm sorry, if I go to roles, okay, I've not created any role yet. So I have the user and then the user group that are here. So that's basically about that. Now let's look at policies, right? We'll go to policies before we move on to other stuff. Now, when you click on policy, so here we are going to use our root, our admin account for it. When you go to policies, policies have, how do I call it? Let me maximize this thing so that you people will see. Zoom in, zoom in. Right, so let's look at the admin access policy. Network AI. Let me look at Chrome. Let's see. Okay, so it's open. Now, you can actually look at the policies through different lenses, right? You can just use the graphic user interface to see what you have. So on the admin access or policy, the admin access policy, these are different services that have full access, or that is granted full access through the administrator access policy. So you can see access analyzer, full access, account, full access, activate, full access, analyzer for business, full access. So when you look at the JSON file, I will explain the JSON file. So these are various parts of a policy, right? It's just a human language kind of thing. You don't have actually have to know code to do this, right? So the version, currently, this is the current version of the JSON language, right? And then it has another thing called statement. So the statement contains the details, right? The details or whatever it is that the account is able to do, or that permission or policy is able to do. So the effect is what? Allow. And then the action, if you see star, it means that every action or any action. Give me a moment. I have to, oh, how much? Okay, right. So the star here says it means what? Every action, and then the resource also means what? Every resource. So that is the different part of a policy or the JSON. What is this? What is included in the JSON? So what you see on the summary, once you see on the summary, so the summary will give you the list. It's a graphic user interface. So every, service, and then all the actions and resources, all resources. So this is what is interpreted here in the JSON file, right? So if you are also writing a policy, this is how you do it, right? You give it a version and then you write the statement. So these are the required part of a policy. There are other parts that are optional. Those are not actually captured in this file. I was trying to see if I could get some somewhere, but I'll get it and then just post it in our chat group, right, to save time. Right, there are other optional parts that wasn't covered here, right? Wasn't covered in the JSON file. There is version, there is ID, and then the statement. And even the statement, there is a statement ID before the effect. There is principal. Principal means the principal is for the account or the user role to which the policy will be applied to. And then the resource, right? The list of resources that the action is applied to, and then action. That's the list of actions that, the policy allows or denies. And there's also a condition. Condition is just to tell when the policy is in effect or when should the policy, yes, there is condition. But condition is also optional, right? Condition is also optional. That is when the policy should be in effect. So, but these are the required ones here. That is why they are there. But all the rest that are left out are optional, right? I'll send this. I'll send the screenshot in there. But if you have Stefan's document, which I think it has been shared over and over again, you see this structure in page 28. Yeah, so I think that we should just all go and look at it. On page 28, you will see the policy structure there. So that is about policies. Now we'll do a little hands-on on policies, right? So what we'll do is I'll go to the root account again. So let me go to users, right? So what I'll do is I'll go to the root account and I'll remove, right, the user that I just created, right, from the user group. So I have one user here. Let me even maximize it. So I have the user that I created here, right? This is the user, and then I'll just remove it. Here, I'm not deleting the user, right? I'm just removing it from the user group. So now this user group doesn't have a user, right? It doesn't have any user, the group. So you can see it's empty. Now, when I come to my Brave browser and then I'll refresh, something would happen. What does it say? Access is what? Is denied. I'm not able to view. So you see the instruction is what? List users. So I'm not able to view the list of users here because I don't have a permission. I don't have a permission to do that, right? So I'll go back to my roots account, and this time I'll attach a permission to the user directly, right? Instead of adding it to a user group to assume the permission of the user group. So what I'll do is I'll click on the user, right? And then on permissions, I'll go to add permissions, right? So you can create an inline permission. That is where you specifically do it yourself manually. I'll just add permissions, and what I will do is attach the policy directly, and the permission I will give it is to have a read-only access, right? So IAM read, right? IAM read-only access. And then I'll just click next and then add permissions. So I've added the read-only access to the user that I created. Now, when I go back to my admin account or my IAM user account, and now I refresh this page, you can see that I'm now able to view the list of users because I've given it a read-only access. Let's try and then create a group and see if I will be able to create. If I click on create group, I'll type, let's say devs, right? And yes, I'll select the username, administrative access, and then create group. So what happens? The user group was not created because what? I don't have, right? It's not authorized to perform create group on the resource because the access or the permission that this user has is what? Only, is just read only. So let me go back and add my user to the group again. So add users, I'll select it and add. Right, so I've added my user to the group. So when I go to users and click on this user, you see the permissions that this user now has. So it has what? A read-only access that was assigned directly, and then it has administrator access that was assigned via the group admin, right? So let's come here and I'll have to refresh. I'll select it, and this time let me just give it a random permission, right? This what? Okay, let's use I want a random one, but I want something that we all have. Okay, so let's see, administrator access elastic beanstalk, right? And I've added this user as well. So create group, and you can see that the group is created since I added the user back to the admin group. Great. So when I go to users from here and I click, since I have admin access, I'll be able to see. So you can see it now has what? 3 permissions, right? 3 policies attached to it, or 3 permissions. And one was direct, the other one was through the group devs, and then the other one was group admin. Judith, your network is bad today. Sorry. So when you go to the groups, when I go to groups, I'll be able to see what? The group that this user belongs to. Right. And when I go to tags, I'll be able to see the tag that I created. So the key value pair is what? Department and IT support. So that's also about policy. So it depends, right? These are generic stuff that I did, but it depends from industry or organization to organization. So depending on the requirement of your organization, you might want to know the kind of policies or the permissions that you grant users. So before I move on, I will just delete this devs group. I don't need it. Right. Okay, great. So I'm using the IAM user accounts now, right? So now let's look at how to create a policy. All right, so you just navigate to policies and then you click on what? Create policy, right? Now on create policies, you can choose the service, and the service we are going to create is what? IAM policy. We are coming to create an IAM policy. Now, what actions are allowed, right? So you see here, there is allow, there is deny. So what are we allowing? See, okay, so list, when I search list, okay, wait, this will be a lot, right? Okay, so we'll just do list user. Wow. Okay, let me come to the list. And okay, so I omitted the S. That is, so list users, and that all. List users, probably list rows, and list access keys. So these are permissions that I'm allowing, right? I'll collapse this one. So we see I've selected three, and then probably read. So I'll do a get user, a get group, and then get group policy. So these, I'm actually like doing some random stuff, right? And okay, I'll not grant any rights. And the resources, I can also specify either all resources or specific resources, right? So for here, I'll also do all resources. Great. Muse, you're also having the same issues. Okay, so I want to be sure I am done. So so you see the allow actions are what? So I selected 3 here, and the total is what is 6, right? So, and then I can also choose to write a JSON file. So that what I selected here, right, is what has been written here. Right. So you can see the version is also for the current version, the version is always going to be 2012 October 17th, right? And then the statement, so you can see statement ID, that is a visual editor zeros. This is also what's it called? An optional, right? And then effect. The effect is what? Allow. And then the action is what you are seeing here, the list of actions that this policy will do, right? So list rows, list users, get group policy, get user, get group, get list access keys. And then also the resource is what? Any resource or all resources. So that's why you can see the star here, right? So I think we are good to go. And then from here, I can just go to next. And now I can type a name for my policy. So I will say test policy, right? And I can give it a description, right? And yes, so here is a summary. Allow one of 384 services. That is, the service is what? The IAM service, right? So we are good here. We'll leave everything as it is. You can choose to add a tag to identify it, and just create policy. So my policy is created, right? Now let's look at customer managed policy, and you can see the policy, my test policy is here. So there is AWS managed for a job function, like administrator access, billing, read only, and there is AWS managed for a general stuff, right? And Alexa for business, access analyzer service, plenty, right? So I'll go to my customer managed service here, and I can now attach this policy, right, to a user or a user group. So let's try and then even attach the policy to the user. Let's see. Okay, so here, add permissions, add, and attach policies directly. I'll choose customer managed, select, next, add permissions. And the permission is what is added. So you can see that it's here. I can also remove it. I'll remove the policy from the user, and then I'll go and then delete the policy. So delete it. I'll have to type the name. So the policy has been deleted and it's deleted. So now you see that the category has disappeared, right? The customer managed category has disappeared now. Great. So next we are going to look, please, any question before I move on? Okay. So next we are going to look at enabling multi-factor authentication, right, for your account. And with this, most of the times when you create your account, you are required to enable multi-factor authentication on your root user account. So here I'm going to use my root user to do that. So to do that, I'll just click on my username and then I'll go to security credentials. So here you can see that I already have a virtual device, right? I've already attached a multi-factor authentication here, but I can wait. Let me go to my authenticator app first and see. Auth. Yes, I can remove it. What are the gum do? I dey fear, but I still won't do them. All right. So I've removed it because most of the times when you assign an MFA device, right, and you lose the device, then it means that you have automatically logged yourself out of the account because you can't log in. You can't log in with the application again, right? Because you need a two-factor authentication before you can log in. So here, when you go to security credentials, so you can see that I now have this one. You don't have MFA assigned. So here you can even click here to assign MFA, or you can just scroll down and then come and click on assign MFA device. So everywhere you can click on that. So I'll go to assign MFA, and my device name is my phone, right? Now, the MFA device, yes, it's virtual, so I'm going to use the Authenticator app, and I'll go to next. So next thing is to actually download let me go to previous. So when I choose Authenticator app, okay, the summary is not here, but normally there are applications that are compatible with right, with AWS. There is Auth from Twilio, there is LastPass, there is Google, is it Google Duo or Google Authenticator, right? A lot of authenticator apps that are compatible with AWS that you can use. So I'll go to next. I use Auth, right? So so you can click on the C list of compatible MFA applications here, and so these are, yeah, so FIDO security keys, virtual authenticator apps. So this is what we have here, right? So there's Twilio, Auth, Duo Mobile, Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, and then Semantic VIP. And all these apps are also available on iOS as well. So I already have the app downloaded. So I'll just show my QR code and then I'll add accounts from my mobile phone. Unfortunately, you cannot see my phone screen, right? But that is fine. I'll just scan the QR code and I can add it here. Right, so I've scanned it. Great. So when you scan it, I mean, all the prompts that you need to follow will be on your phone screen to follow. Right. The most important thing is you scan the QR code, and you will do that from the app. Now, the app will randomly generate two codes for me, right? So the first one I have to enter. So I have the first one here, 505. And then now I'll wait for the next one. In a couple of seconds, it will generate another one for me. And then I'll enter the second one also here. It's just to make sure that you have successfully, activated the virtual app or integrated the multi-factor authentication app with your account. Okay, so the second one is generated, right? And then add MFA. Great. So you can see that when did I create it? Now, and then the name that I gave to it is here. So how do I know that this is working? I'll sign out from the account, and then I'll log back in, right? So I'll enter my user. So if you are using your root user, then that is the email that you use to create the account. And if it is an IAM user, then you have to enter the account alias, right? Or the account ID, right? But we are using our root user here. So the email, and even now there is captcha. Will be small security. Great. And then I'll submit, and then now my password, and then now the MFA code. So the MFA code from the app is right. And this, always know that this code is not like a permanent code. The MFA code changes, right? The app generates the code, I think, in every 30 seconds, or is it 15 seconds or so, right? So it will be different. So that is why even if somebody gets access to your account, they get your credentials to your root user account, the account is still not compromised, because there is a 2FA that the person have to go through. So my 2FA or my MFA integration or assignments worked. Great. Another thing to also enforce, or another level of security, is also using password policies, right? So with password policies, you also go to IAM. Right, so these are policies that you have to enforce, right? Maybe like an organizational culture that you have to enforce, so that everybody heed to that. So you go to IAM, and then you go to account settings, right? On account settings, ignore this thing. I don't know why this thing is here anyway. And always remember, these things you have to do it on the root account. When it comes to IAM user management and all that, you have to do it in your root account. So the current password policy here is a minimum of 8 characters. The password never expires, and then the password must not be identical to your AWS account name or email address. The password strength, you have to include a minimum of 3 of the mix of the character types. That is an uppercase, a lowercase, numbers, and non-alphanumeric characters. We can now edit this one. So this is the IAM default, and then now use a custom policy. So we can change it to what? So there are some websites that you visit, they tell you to enter a minimum of 16 characters, right? So we can choose a minimum of 16 characters, and then the password strength have to require at least 1 uppercase, at least 1 lowercase, and then at least 1 number, and also require at least 1 alphanumeric number. And these are the alphanumeric numbers that it will require. You can also turn on password policy, right? When you turn on password policy, you give it an expiry date that, okay, every, let's say, 30 days, every user is required to create a new account. So the old account, create a new password. So the old password is going to expire. All right. So there are websites that after some days, they will tell you that, oh, your password has expired. So you have to create a new one, right? And when the password expire, you can also say that the password expiration has to require the admin to reset your password before you are able to set your own password. But it depends on the organization culture. And you can also allow users to change their own password, even if the expiration date hasn't expired. And then you can, yes, and this is another best practice that you can also use, right? To prevent password reuse, right? prevent password reuse. So you can just do, let's say, 1. So it means that the password can only be used like just once. You get it, and then you cannot use it again, right? So that is also about the IAM policy. So immediately you can create this. So let me save changes. So you can see that this will impact any new user creation and then all existing users changing their password. So here it means that if a user would want to change their password, this will be applied to them, right? So if you have your old password, you can use it. But the moment you would want to change your password, these new rules will apply to them, right? And then set custom. So this policy, so you can see that it has changed. Now we have 16 characters. Password expires in 30 days and require at least 1 uppercase letter from the Latin alphabet, 1 lowercase, require at least 1 number, require at least an alphanumeric number. But I'll go back and edit and then choose the IAM default so that I wouldn't have any wahala. All right, so now I am back to my default setting. So that is also another way to enforce security, or another security best practice. So you use MFA and then you use what? A password policy. Great. Please, any question? Now, the next thing that we are going to look at is access keys and the command line interface, right? So what you need to do first is to download and install the command line interface. That's the AWS command line interface. Now, for you to verify that you have installed the command line interface, you go to your command prompt, right? You open your CMD and you type AWS -- version, right? To check the version. Now, I have mine. Hey, let me check if I've installed mine, but I'm sure I've installed mine. Now, what do we see here? We see, let me maximize it. It says what? AWS is not recognized as an internal or external command operable program or batch file. That is fine. Sometimes it's because of the path that probably the installation went, right? So what you can do is you can search for where this AWS service or this AWS CLI was installed. And then there is another settings that you can do in your Windows to bring it back, right? So I'll search where, and then I'll type AWS. It still didn't find it, and I'll type where again, and then now I'll force it to search everywhere on my PC, right? So this is the command where /r, and then now C and backslash. Where's my backslash? This is my keyboard there, wahala.
From mic to keyboard.
Aha. I know they see where by backslash D. All right, so where and then AWS. So it will search. So you can see that this one is taking some time. So it is searching everywhere on my C drive to see where I installed my AWS CLI. Let's give it a moment. Enchemum. Because I remember I installed this thing. Let me even go to my C and see that it is there. Oh, I know you install this thing. What do you do? Since well, like I just do. So if you are watching, I'm trying to install the CLI again, the command line interface again, right? And it's just after you download the file, you just have to open the setup file, and it's an easy to follow steps. Okay, couldn't find it. Probably I removed it or something. And as I did, I installed it on a different machine. Right. Okay. So now that it's installed, I'll go to my CMD again and type this code again. Still, we cannot find it. I'll search for it, couldn't find it, and I'll press this one. Should find it this time. Okay, so now this is the part that is installed to. So what I'll do is I'll copy this file path and I'll go to my Windows and I'll search for what we call environment variables, right? So edit environment variables. Sorry. Should be the one for my account. Yes, edit environment variables for my account. Correct. And I'll come to path, right? And I'll edit this path. And you can see that there is only one path here. So I'll add another path that is the AWS CLI the CLI path that I copied, right? Click OK, OK. And then now, if I should type my command, sorry, I have to exit the CMD. And then now AWS --, version, and you can see it's taking a while. Then, so if you see this, then it means that you have your CLI installed. Great. I will not close it. I will just minimize it, and then I'll go back to my IAM console or my AWS management console. So now and we use CLI to connect to the AWS, our AWS resources, or our AWS environment, right? Via SSH. So you need an access key and you need a secret access key. So the access key is just like your username, and then your secret access key is just like what your password. And these are stuff that you don't have to share with anyone, right? So here we'll go to users, and then now I'll click on this username, right? sorry. I'll come to my username here and then go to security credentials. Great. I'll scroll down. And access keys, right? And I'll create access key. So, okay, sorry, I'm using my root user. Come here. I'll go to security credentials. So, just as we learned from CCP, you don't have to create access keys for your root user, right? In fact, if there is one, it is supposed to be what? To be deleted, right? So you don't create it. That's why when I was creating, it told me what? It is not recommended, right? So I'll not assign the MFA for this one, but since we've gone through it, you can all do that, right? So I'll go to my security credentials and here create access key. And this one is also straightforward. And now we are using what? The command line interface. There are other ones, local code, application run on AWS compute service. There is a third-party service, application running outside AWS, and then there are other when these keys are not listed. But here we are doing it for what? The CLI. So we'll create the CLI, and then for the CLI, it is recommended that we use what? Cloud Shell. We'll go into Cloud Shell shortly. And then there is also the CLI version 2, right? So I understand the above recommendation and I want to proceed to create an access key. Next. So description, test, access key. And then I'll now create the access key. So my access key is created and these are what I'm going to use to log in into my CLI. So I'll put this window side by side, bring this one here. Yes, and so since I've verified that my AWS CLI is now working, I can now, through my command prompt, now I'll say AWS configure, and it will ask for my access key ID. So I'll copy this access key ID, paste, enter, and then now it will ask for my secret access key. I'll copy this one here. I'll just click on copy here, right? Then come to command prompt, paste, and then enter. So default region name. So to get your region name, you can come here, click on here, and then you see the region name. I am in Africa, so I mean I'll just use this Cape Town, right? For low latency sake, it is always recommended that you choose what the region that is closer to you for low latency. So I'll use South Africa, yeah, and then the region name is what?
Yeah,
yeah.
Sometimes it's not necessarily the region closest to you, but the region you have the faster connection with.
Okay, yes,
Usually
that's fine.
in Ghana here, when we test, AWS has that facility. It tests the most the region that you can connect faster to. It usually ends up in France. I think France West.
Oh, okay, okay.
Because the internet infrastructure, the global internet infrastructure, hardly for us for Ghana to have a connection to South Africa. Usually goes to Europe before.
Okay.
So it's usually good. So the South Africa, for all you know, the this one will go to Europe before it redirects to South Africa. So it becomes longer.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. So for best practices, okay, then we'll use Paris, right? Since I mean from what our brother said, the place that we are mostly likely to it's just like you coming to your account and then clicking here and then clicking the region that you want. So it's just the same with the CLI, right? So for the region name for Paris is what? EU West 3, right? So you just type EU West and 3. That is the region name. For the output format, you just go ahead and then press enter. And we are logged in like that. Right. So here we can now continue to do certain things. So AWS, IAM, list users. I didn't type the command well. List users, correct. So it should give me a list of the users that I have created. So you can see the username is what? Ohene. The user ID is what we have here. And I think we can see, where do I even see this? So you can see the user ID here, 97263106238 is the same thing that we have here exactly, right? And then here, this is more or less like an alias, right? Where do I even check this one, say? I'll look for it later. But these are like the details on the user, the IAM user that I created, right? So the create date is the date that I created, and then the password, the last date that I use the password is also here, right? And these commands, you can just Google them and you'll be able to, you see all of them, right? Or you can even do IAM help. So you can see this one, maybe you meant list users, it came here. Or you can just write help and then you will get, so AWS IAM help, and then you will see all the I beg we could finish. I finish. I will upload the video so that we all can have it. Why? So when I'm done, we are recording, so when I'm done, we'll share it. But it is also best that you stay and then follow through. So that is it with CLI, right? It's basically you use CLI to access your resources or your AWS resources via SSH. So everything that you would want to do, you just help, you go to help, but you always have to use AWS and then you type help. So if it is you spinning up a resource, then you can do AWS, maybe EC2 help, and then you have all the commands that you are able to use, right? And then you use it for your CLI access. So that is also about the CLI. And I made mention of Cloud Shell. So Cloud Shell is a web interface for just like the CLI, right? So it is also, I think it's a regional service. So not all the regions have it, right? So when, let me load this page first then. So this Cloud Shell, right? So if you are in a region and then you are not seeing Cloud Shell, then it means that Cloud Shell is not, if you are not seeing that icon, then it means that it's not available in that region, right? And the beauty of Cloud Shell is that when you click, it's automatically to create your environment and it will automatically log you in. You don't need to go through the CLI commands here, right? So it will create the environment. Yes, and an environment is created. Now, let me even come to the CLI bit. So here you see, I was able to list users. Now, let me go to my root account, right? And then remove the user from the group, right? Let me go to the user and also take off the read-only access. Great. Now, let me go to CLI. Now, AWS list users. And I'll just have this error, right? So error occurred, access denied when calling the list users operation because I don't have access. I just removed it, right? So I'll go back to my root user and it's the same everywhere. When I go to my user here, let me close the Cloud Shell phone. I think we have already seen that, right? So there's no need to, go there. So let me go to my root user and add the row back. Right. groups, add user to groups, admin, add. Great. Now the user is added. If I should list the user again, I should be able to get the user list. Beautiful. Right. Now let's go to Cloud Shell. So this is Cloud Shell. And as I said, it is also just like the CLI, right? So I will also do one or two things. So the same thing. Let me see. IAM list users. Why do I always leave the T out? List users. Sorry, I left my AWS out. And you can see that that is the same thing that we have here, right? And the Cloud Shell, you are able to even look at preferences. So the font size is the smallest. I'll choose medium and confirm. You can see I have a more bigger text now. Let's look at the large, confirm, and I have so CLS. Okay, so I'm just clearing the screen, right? And the beauty about Cloud Shell is that you have a repository, right? They've created a whole repository for you, so you'll be able to, create a file in there. So automatically, let's create a file, and then we'll be able to even download the file from Cloud Shell, right? So I'm creating a text file. So echo, this is a test note, right? And I'm putting it into test note.txt, right? So I'll list the file ls, and you can see that the test. Please don't mind the command there. It's just something that I'm doing to test that we have a repository there, right? So you can see the test notes here, right? And this file can be downloaded, or we can also see what is in it. So cats, .txt, and you can see that there's the content of what the text note.txt file that we created. So this is a test note. Now I said that you can download files straight from the Cloud Shell, and you can even as well upload a file into the Cloud Shell, right? Now to download, I want to download this text file. So what I will do is I'll check the directory that I am in, and this is the directory that I am in. So what I will do is I'll copy this directory, and then now I'll go to download file, paste, right, the directory name here, and then now I'll do / the name of the file, test notes.txt, and download. So the download it's being prepared, and you can see where it's asking me where I should save it, and then I'll save it here, and I can now, since it's downloaded, I can open it. It opens with my notepad, and you can see the text that I created here. I can go ahead and then remove the file. So remove test note.txt, and then it is removed. If I go to ls, you can see that now there is no file here anymore. Right, so that is also with Cloud Shell. So if you don't have your CLI, if you don't have CLI, or you've not installed the CLI, or you don't want to use CLI, that is fine. You can still go ahead and then use what? Cloud Shell. So that is also about access keys and CLI. Question D. Okay, let's move on to roles. Now we are all aware, or we all learned from CCP that it is always not recommended to create like a user account for a service that probably might perform a temporal action, and then not do it again. The most effective way or the best practice is that you create a rule. You create an IAM rule for that service to assume whenever they want to perform an action, and then they leave that role when they are done performing the action, right? So to create roles, it is also straightforward. You go to roles, and these are roles that were there. I don't know if this one's, let me see. Okay, so this is a service link rule. So this for trusted advisor and this for support. So these are the default rules that are there. So we all know what trusted advisor does, right? So trusted advisor more or less like checks your system and then gives you recommendations on the best practices that you have to do. You can also create your custom role, and then I'm creating a role for what? A service. You can also create a role for an account. You can create a role for a web identity. But for this scope, we'll look at creating a role for the service, and then what is the use case. So the use case is what? Maybe we'll create a role for EC2, and the EC2, there are different types, right? So an EC2 role for systems manager, for sport fleet role, all of that. But we'll just stick to EC2. We'll go to next, and yes, we have to also select permission for that, and this one is just random. I'm selecting just any of them, right? So I'll choose administrator access. Next, the role name EC2 role, right? So it says allows EC2 instance to call AWS service on your behalf, and this is the policy. So the policy version, the statement, the effect, and the action, that is what STS assume role, and the principal and the service as well. So the service is another principal. So EC2 does Amazon, blah blah blah. So this is the JSON script for the role that we have created. And also, as I said, tags are all over the place on the AWS console. And once this is done, create the role. So this role is created and it is linked to what? The EC2 service. So it means that the EC2 service will be able to read like all the permissions in the administrator access policy, right? The EC2 service will be able to also, do all of those things or access all those services, right? So you can also go to, let's look at the trusted advisor role. So the trusted advisor has what? The trusted advisor something policy. So we can go through it and then see the details. So you can see it has what? 20 out of 384 services. So it has CloudFormation, and the access level is limited. It can read and then list, finish. It cannot write. CloudFront just lists. CloudTrail, you can read CloudTrail analytics. CloudWatch can also read CloudWatch analytics. Course Explorer, the same thing, can read like that. So it means that the trusted advisor can only assume the role, this trusted advisor role, and then these are the actions that it can perform, right? And it is applied to the resources, all resources, and this is what it can do, right? If you look at the JSON file, you can see the script here and the resources, right? Go back to rows. I don't need this row, so I'll delete it. Copy this and paste. I say paste, delete, right? So my custom row that I created has been deleted. So that is also about roles. So they are kind of temporal positions that services can assume to perform an action, and then they are demoted from that role once they are done. Yes, so we are left with the last thing to do, and we'll call it a night for tonight. and that is the security tools that you can use. So the first one is credential report. So credential reports just let you download a list of credentials in your AWS account, right? So it will download it in a CSV file, and the CSV file is downloaded. I will open it, and you can see I have how many accounts. I have 2, the root account, and then the second account that I created. You can see the date, the creation time, right? The user creation time, and see the password. This password what? Password last changed, and password change here is what is not supported because you can change the root account. So the root account password, right? Is it MFA activated? And you can see what we saw from the the graphic user interface. MFA was active for the root user, but the IAM user was not active. So you can see that this is false. Access key, the root user doesn't have an access key, so you can see it's false, but the IAM user has what? An access key, right? And access key access is what? IAM. The region is what? US East 1. That is the last used region that we use it. So the default is always is what? US East 1. And so access key active, access key 2. So we have only one access key that we have created for the IAM user. So you can see that it's here. The rest are also here for you to see. So if I have 10 users, I will have all of them here, and I'll be able to what? Audit them. So that's about credentials reports. You're able to see like what's it called? Different stuff about your account or the accounts that you have. Okay, Rosemond, you had this question, yes? Okay, you mean you had a question on credentials report, right? Yeah, I also had a question on that. And the next one is the access analyzer. Hey, sorry, the access advisor. Right, so the next one is the access advisor. Then to check the access advisor, you have to click on a user, right? And then you go to the access advisor tab. Here, it gives you a list. It gives you a user, right? And then the status of the services that they have access to. So you can see for today, like the current status of the services that they have access to. So for today, for this account, I've accessed what the identity and access management service, and then the policy that is granting this permission is what the administrator access policy. I've accessed the course explorer service today. I've accessed notifications. Oh, this is my root user. Yeah. So this is my root user account. So yes, I've accessed notifications. I've accessed EC2. I've accessed organizations. I've accessed the IAM. This is what I did, right? And then I've also accessed what the resource explorer. Some of the things are automatic, like it's automatic in the background. It happens, right? So when it happens, it will still be attached to the account as if you access it. For example, if you receive a notification, you will see the service or the service that's brought up that notification, even though you have not read it, but the moment you receive it, it's applied to the account. And there are other services that I have not accessed. So the recent access, I think, appears in about 4 hours or so, right? Within your 4 hours of access, you'll be able to, you see the services that you have access. So here, what you do or it helps you to do is that maybe in a period you granted some users like some admin access and another, but you realize that for a number of time you are doing your audit and you see that, oh, for 3 months continuously, this user has not accessed this service, right? This user has not accessed the service. So what you can do is that you can now go in and audit the policy and then remove access to those services that the user hasn't access for a very long time. It means that they don't need it. And the principle of what least privilege comes in here. It means that they don't need it. So you will have to remove the users from those access, or remove them from accessing these services, because it's more or less exposes them, or even give room for vulnerabilities, right? Because on Okra, they don't know they have that access. In case it happens that their account is compromised, and the attacker can take advantage of the permissions and then mess up with your account. So that is basically about the IAM service and some of the stuff that you can do, or like the basic things that you need to do. And as I said, company culture, organization culture differs. So as to even account naming, password policies, what's it called, user policies, permissions, and then all that may differ. Right? There are some organizations that even in the same department, some people don't have access to other stuff, just like finance. The head of finance might have access to resources that his subordinates might not have, right? So it depends, but it is just a fair idea that it's just fair that you have a fair idea of how these things work, so that you'll be able to find your way around it. So this brings us to the end of our IAM demonstration session, or IAM lab session. This is a free service, so you don't get charged for any of the things that we did. So I would recommend that, yes, there are some of us have access to the management console via the lab exercises that is in our module. So that is also fine. You can use it, but I've actually not explored the IAM through the lab console, because the lab console have limitations, certain limitations that you can do. But I think for IAM, you should be okay to be able to use it. If not, I just recommend that you create an AWS account and then use it. You are not going to be charged for having that account, and then with IAM, you are also not going to be charged for anything of that sort, right? So that is about it for today. If anybody has a question, you can ask. You're welcome. So I'll try for those who had network problems. People go bed immediately. I talk, say I go. Let me end this thing.